Hey, what's good guys? Today we're going to be redesigning posters for some of my favorite Pixar movies, and the style we're going to be using is from a legendary designer named Tom Eckersley. I recently came across this cool designer while scrolling online, and he's known for creating beautiful and simple posters from the 30s and 40s. A little bit about Eckersley: he was born in September 30th, 1914 and enrolled in Salford Art School in the UK around the 30s. You know a good designer when he or she is wearing a black turtleneck. Eckersley is known for his distinct minimal flat graphics with bold colors and outlines. He began his career in 1934 when he moved to London as a freelance poster designer. He quickly became known for transforming bland informational signs into works of art. He's celebrated as the godfather of modern graphic design, and his work beautifully separated communications from commercial art. His talent for simplifying characters and objects continued to inspire designers around the world, and his ability to break down complex messages in a digestible and visually appealing way is something that professional designers still strive for till this day. So that would be awesome to pay homage to Tom Eckersley's style and turn some lovely Pixar films into his aesthetic. So let's get started. Alright guys, we're going to open up Illustrator and let's set the dimensions to 24 by 36, the standard poster size. And we're going to make 4 different artboards since we're going to do 4 different Pixar film posters. Let's hit create. And you see it all settled together here. So we're going to open up the artboards tab. We're going to play with the columns and spacing. Let's have it 4 in a row together so we can see it a bit better all together. And we're going to up the spacing between it. So let's set around 10 inches. So that looks pretty good. And it has some nice ample spacing between them. I have the logos all together, so we're just going to plot that into our file. And the 4 different Pixar films we're going to use is Ratatouille, Up, WALL-E, and Toy Story. So we're going to clean up the logos and put them into the particular posters itself. I also created a mood board of a couple of Tom Eckersley posters that we can reference from whenever we're designing. So I'm going to drag that into our canvas. And let's create a color swatch of all of the colors he used through this board so we can use that into our posters as well. So we're going to create a couple of squares and just plot that into it, kind of like a watercolor set. So we're just going to drag and eyedrop each of the colors that we like. Alright, awesome. We got those and the colors are looking really nice. So what we want to do next is just categorize which poster is which. Let's choose a solid background that could be our starting basis of what that poster can be. So for Ratatouille, I think a great color is red. One of the random and only things that I remember in art school is that our art teacher told us that the reason why there's so many red in fast food logos like McDonald's, In-N-Out, Carl's Jr. is that red symbolizes this idea of hunger and craving. Whenever you drive on the freeway and you see that logo, it pops out, it stands out in your eye, and there's this whole science behind that. So Up is super straightforward. I think blue is a great way to symbolize the sky. Carl and Russell's journey taking the house in the air to the canyon. WALL-E, let's do black to represent space as well. And for Toy Story, let's do green just to represent this idea of grass, kids playing on the playground, and this fun mentality to it. So let's create a system where all of these posters can look like one family. So we're gonna take the Disney Pixar lockup and let's just add it up to the top for each poster. And usually for movie posters, many times the logos are on the bottom. We're gonna mimic that as well, just to have a more cinematic feel to it. And nice, it's looking good. Got this cool system of posters that we can start designing onto. Alright, so let's pull up a few screen grabs from the movie Ratatouille, and that'll be fun to illustrate the scene where Remy is inside the hat controlling the main character. Let's scrub do and see if we could show any of that scene. And that's pretty cool where he's inside of the hat. Let's just drag that into our composition. There's that fun mirror scene where they're trying things out. That could be awesome too, we could drag in. And that's looking good. I think we could start from there. And what I always do is kind of just take a reference and crop it into our composition just so we can have a side-by-side comparison. And let's create the hat first. We're gonna drag in that rectangle shape. Let's curve the top edges a little bit to get that nice rounded corners on the top. What we want to do is create that nice iconic lines for the chef's hat, and we're just gonna drag that in. Let's duplicate that. we're going to use that pathfinder tool to cut the lines through so we can shade in the individual rectangles. So now that we got that cut, let's fill in the colors so every other rectangle could be a different shade. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And let's create the main character's orange hair. So we're just going to use a bunch of circles and just mimic that round head shaped corner. Alright, we're just going to select all of that, put that behind that chef's hat, and we want to clip that into that poster rectangle so it's a little more cleaner that we can work on. Next up, let's create Remy. Just looking at Tom Eckersley's poster, that chicken looked pretty similar to Remy. We could use that as a foundation to work off of. So we're going to trace and copy the skeleton of that chicken and work from there. So now that we got that outline, let's try to make it a little bit more closer to Remy. Let's give him that nice blue shade. Let's work on his eyes. And then we're going to select his eyes. He has a brownish eye. So Remy also has this iconic pink rat nose that the chicken illustration didn't have, so we're going to add that in just to make it look a little bit more rat-like. Yeah, starting to look pretty cool. And let's change that orange hair color just so it has a bit more vibrancy to it. So one thing fun about this scene is that the main character always puts his spoon up to his head for Remy to smell the spoon and the ingredients and to see if the soup is smelling right, so we can mimic that into our poster as well. It's looking plain, so let's add in some ingredients or spices into the mix. I was thinking something like basil or some kind of leaf. So to create that shape, we're going to use a circle, stretch the edges and point them so it creates that leaf-like shape. And we're just going to scatter it around the spoon just to create a little more dimension and fill up that space. And let's tilt it a little bit so it looks more natural. Cool. And we're going to duplicate that spoon, just create another set towards the bottom to fill in the overall poster space. And let's change the color of what that mystery soup is. So let's add in some background elements to give the poster a bit more dimension. Because it is a kitchen and there's always smoke, fire, and beautiful smells all the time, we could mimic that smoky environment. So let's create some circles and mimic that smoke background. And for the smoke, we're going to set a background lighter than the color so it's a bit more subtle. And let's just plop it around organically just to give a feel of that. And I'm just going to clean and tweak some of the posters and see where it comes from there. Bam. And I feel like we're pretty finished with this one. Some last things I added to this poster were the strangly hairs around Remy, just to show that he's controlling it similar to the movie. So yeah, I'm digging this poster, it's looking pretty cool. Next up is Up. Oh my gosh, this movie got me in tears in the beginning where it shows Carl and his wifey's origin stories. Got the snot bubbles, the red puffy eyes. Let me know if you guys teared up in this movie too. That song was beautiful as well. So similar to Ratatouille, let's grab some inspirations from the movie itself. Let's get all of the characters lined up together so we have a nice profile view to illustrate from. And let's just drag that in. Let's also have Tom Eckersley's poster series close to us so we can directly reference it and make sure that we're incorporating his style. So let's do Kevin the bird first, since it looks close to what Tom Eckersley did where he made the parrot. So we're gonna do the eye first. And Kevin has this nice green aureole around his eyes too. Let's mimic that. And we're gonna illustrate the beak shape. Let's use the pencil to create it, stretch it around. Let's angle it a bit more like Tom Eckersley's bird. And we're gonna curve it around so it's not as sharp on the edges. Let's color that beak. We're gonna add in the red, and let's create that awkward neck that Kevin has. Next up, let's do Carl. So Carl has this very distinguished square head that we can use as a starting point. So let's create a square. Let's round the edges of that. So we're gonna put in his nose first. Let's pick a color from our color swatch that has a bit more of Carl's skin tone. And let's create his eyeballs. You know, it's very grumpy. And just give me a couple minutes and let's jam on Carl's facial features. Alright, cool. Carl is looking pretty awesome. Let's create Russell as well. So Russell has this really cute egg-like shape that we can use to start off from, and let's take it from there. And Russell's looking pretty cute with his heavy backpack. And now that the characters are all set, one thing cool about the movie is that Russell and Carl are dragging that huge iconic house where they have ropes on their backpack, their backs, and they're dragging this around the jungle. So let's create that rope area and the floating house too. And for Russell, I think a great accessory we can add into is that Boy Scout badge around his chest. So let's add that in as well. And we can't forget Doug, right? So let's grab a reference of Doug and illustrate him too. Alright, cool. Doug's looking pretty cute. So we have all of the elements of the characters in place, but I'm not satisfied with where the characters are so static. Carl, Russell, and the dog are bound together in that left corner. So what will make this poster feel more fun is if we have a more exaggerated feel of Russell and Carl towards the foreground. And let's make Russell on the left and Carl on the right. Kind of split their face on the edges. Let's play with that dynamic of the rope where it kind of stretches towards the background and have that house feel like it's really behind them in the clouds. So let's play with that scaling, and we're just gonna illustrate the lines onto their backs, stretching in the background. Let's put Kevin on the left to fill in that space. And yeah, I think it's looking a lot better and more cinematic. That's the up poster. Alright, so we have WALL-E next up, another beautiful movie made by Pixar. So I'm thinking this poster could be super simple, where it shows that iconic scene of WALL-E and Eve floating in space with Armstrong's Lavi and Rose playing in the background. WALL-E has that ghetto fire hydrant flying through the air. Let's drag in some inspirations and stills of the movie itself. So let's type in Google WALL-E and Eve in space, and yeah, we got some nice inspirations and references of them. So let's start off with the background, just using simple white dots. Let's add that in to mimic the stars and just give the overall background some depth. Let's start off with Eve first, since her shape is a bit more simple. So she has this interesting and unique side oval shape to her, so let's kind of mimic that as well. Let's offset the path to create the screen on her face. And let's create her eyes. I think a nice simple trick to show her eyes is splitting a circle in half and showing the joy in her eyes. So we could do that as well. Let's create her torso and body as well. Let's also create that bluish tint which shows that she's flying in space, and we're just going to create a couple of ovals and spread it outwards. And yeah, Eve's looking pretty cool. Let's do Wally next. So Wally's character is very interesting. It's a straight square with some ET eyes going on. So we're gonna just create that as well. Wally's looking pretty cool. Let's create him holding the fire hydrant next to him. So we're gonna create that shape. So let's add in the white foam coming out of the fire hydrant and make it similar size to Eve's blue thing emanating out of her, just to show that they're flying together. And I think a sweet feature we can add is Wally holding Eve's hand. Let's draw that. Let's create with the pad tool a line, and just using simple shapes of Wally's hand details. Let's use a square and let's split that up in the middle. Yeah, it's looking pretty cool. And I'm gonna just clean this poster up a little bit and just rearrange the stars to make it a bit more balanced. And yeah, it's looking good. This is the Wally poster. Let me know what you guys think. Alright, last up, Toy Story, another great movie from Pixar. And what would be nice about this poster is if we create, each Toy Story that they have always shows all of the characters on the floor kind of scattered playing dead, so we could mimic that scene as well. And let's include Buzz and Woody because they're the main characters. Green is a cool background, but let's simulate a wooden floor just to show that it's inside of a room. So let's change the green background and make it into a brownish tone. And let's create tiled wooden floors. So what I'm going to do is make some diagonal lines. Let's thicken up the line a little bit and make the coloring a bit darker than the background itself. And what we want to do is scatter that and let's create a pattern to it. And yeah, we have this cool, nice tiled background to it. And let's start illustrating Woody first. Woody has this long rectangle face to him. He has these big bulgy eyes. So let's create that. Let's also illustrate his cowboy sheriff outfit. He has this red handkerchief. And a nice touch is Mr. Potato Head's arm. Thought it would be a nice random item to incorporate in this background. And it's fairly easy to illustrate, so let's create that as well. Cool, and I think we forgot Woody's leg. I think it would be funny to have his legs awkwardly dangling off the side to show that he got tossed. So let's grab the path tool and create that leg shape and enlarge the strokes. Let's curve the edges. And Woody's bulging eyes is kind of freaking me out, so I think we can get rid of that white around his pupils. Let's just eliminate that just to make the overall illustration more simple. And it's looking pretty cool. So we're gonna illustrate Woody's hat next. How we're gonna get those edges of that cowboy hat, we're gonna use the zigzag tool. So we're gonna go select that circle, press effect, distort, and click zigzag. And from there it's gonna show you this menu bar where you could edit how much of that curvature that you want on the edges, and you could either make it smooth or corner. Right now it's this harsh shaped corner. Let's click smooth just to give it a bit more of a nice rounded edge to it. And yeah, it's looking pretty cool. Next up is Buzz. We're gonna illustrate his head. He has a bit more of a chubby oval face, and he has these, I don't know if they're like purple headphones around his head, but let's illustrate that. And we're gonna illustrate his body too. So now that we have most of the characters laid out, let's start refining the characters. It looks like we could work on Woody's boots. So let's give it that iconic boot shape and also the metal star shape on the edge. And to create that nice star shape on Woody's boots, we're gonna go into the shape tool, and when you hover click it, there's gonna be the option of the star tool. We're gonna click on that, and it's gonna give you this menu bar where you can control how many points there are, and we're gonna click 10. Let's round the edges of the star to give it a softer tone, and let's make it into that nice gold color. And the bottom right corner looks empty, so we can include one last character. And looking from the photo reference that we have, let's include those funny little green alien characters. We can include one of them. Alright, so we're gonna illustrate them. They have a bit of a Hey Arnold head shape to him with elf ears, so we're gonna add that in. Where they got the 3 eyes that we could illustrate, so let's put those 3 eyes in there. And let's kind of crop him off to the edge a bit, similar to how we have Woody and Buzz with him waving. I think that's a great place to add him in. And that's looking really good. So just to fill up that space a bit more, Jesse has this really nice red cowboy hat as well. We can add that in. Since we already have Woody's hat, we're just going to use the same structure to it, but just make it red with the white outlines on the edges. And you know, we have these gaps around these characters that we could fill in. So let's take what we have. We have Mr. Potato Head's ear. We could also add in a Mrs. Potato Head's ear with the earring in there, and also their nose. Let's put that in between Woody and Buzz. And lastly, what will make these characters feel like they're on the floor laying down is if we include a subtle drop shadow to them. And yeah, this is the Toy Story poster. Hope you guys like it. So a big thank you to Tom Eckersley for making some mad inspirational posters for us to riff off of. Hope you guys enjoyed this design session, and let me know which poster you guys like best. If you guys have any dope ideas for future videos, please leave a comment down below. If you guys dig the video, please leave a like. If you want to see more videos like these, please subscribe. I'll greatly appreciate it. Thanks again, and see y'all soon. Peace.